Hello, everyone. Here's a brief summary of the movie Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Enjoy. Today is Greg's first day of middle school, and his older brother, shoving him aside, informs him that he overslept. In a rush, Greg starts getting ready until his groggy father comes running at the noise. It's 4 a.m., and school doesn't start until next week. But to make matters worse, little Manny has been awakened and is preventing their mom from sleeping. Roderick's plan has worked, and he's once again tricked his younger brother. But Greg thinks he's ready for this new phase of life. Unlike his friend Rolly, who seems to have forgotten to grow up, the alarm clock rings, and the first day of school begins with Greg being suffocated by his older brother's armpit odor. Roderick gives him a couple of survival tips for middle school. Manny P's sitting right behind Greg, which kills his appetite, all because Greg frightened him with a monster living in the toilet. Greg was shocked when he first walked into school. Younger kids like him have to go to school with hairy gorillas who have already hit their growth spurts, as well as juvenile delinquents and psychos. Greg is lucky that Shiro Gupta, who is even smaller than him, is also here. The most responsible stage is choosing a place. It is very important not to get stuck with some fool for the whole year. But Rolly, for example, doesn't realize where he's gotten to because he's wearing an outfit his parents brought back from a trip. Greg has a plan to become the most popular guy in school. Rolly wonders who's at the bottom of the popularity scale and immediately gets his answer Fregley, who gets sent home once a month due to hygiene issues. The gym teacher divides the students into two teams. The cooler kids get to wear jerseys, while the losers don't. The teacher invents a game called Gladiator, where the shirtless wimps have to run from their taller pursuers. Greg and his friends decide to hide under the bleachers for the rest of the class. But Greg is outraged that they have to go up against these Neanderthals. 7th grader Angie, who was hiding right there, completely agrees with him. She calls middle school a cattle pen where parents dump their kids to avoid dealing with them during the toughest period of their lives. Rolly is thrilled. He's never talked to a girl for this long before. But Greg came up with the idea of wearing jerseys to make the bullies think they belong. Then he saw it. A greenish piece of cheese, and nearly made a fatal mistake by reaching for it. Shiro Gupta stopped Greg just in time. The cheese had a mysterious origin, and nobody dared to touch it. Once, Darren did, and he became a school outcast. The cheese frenzy only ended when Greta Mueller took it to Germany with her. Since then, the cheese had been lying on the pavement, waiting for its next victim. Another nightmare awaited Greg in the restroom. There are no doors in the stalls, but the cruelest place on earth is the cafeteria. Nobody allowed Greg and his friend to sit at their table, so they had to settle on the floor near the trash cans. Greg thought the first day wasn't so bad. But then everyone's roles were offered to come over and play. Those words excited a bully. Let this fool make fun of Greg now because in 20 years he'll be picking up after his dog. Greg advised his friend that their peers were saying they should hang out, not play. Another slip-up like that, and they'd be eating on the floor for the rest of the year. Greg sneaked into his older brother's room to check out what the class favorites looked like in his yearbook. Roderick caught his friends and threatened them. Rolly clung to Roderick's leg to give Greg a chance to escape and hide in his room. His bladder was about to burst, and there was no more holding it in. Greg dared to challenge his brother, but Roderick tricked him. The kid had to take off his diaper for Manny. Suddenly, Roderick hiding behind the shower curtain startled him, but he was doused from head to toe in response. Once again, Greg ended up being the scapegoat and had to clean the bathroom. Even the janitor knows about the cheese touch. Their friends had to choose which club to join to become popular. Patty, who plans to become the school council president and has been after Greg since 4th grade, pushed them. Greg used to sing a mean song about her. Angie suggested that he join the school newspaper, but Greg plans for them to write about him, not others. Greg decided to take up wrestling because he's been watching it on TV for years and knows all the best moves. But it turns out it's not like on television. The gym teacher started tossing his little assistant until he passed out. At this time, the man divided the students into weight categories. Greg had to wrestle against Heffley. Who would have thought that this loser would turn out to be such a tough fighter? He tossed and threw Greg until he surrendered. But Greg came up with a plan. He would gain 5 kilograms and move to the next group so he wouldn't have to fight that machine again. But Greg didn't want to wait to gain weight, so at the next weigh-in, he simply used his mom's ankle weights to cheat his way into his friend's group. But he will have to wrestle against Patty, whose parents threatened to sue the school if she was not allowed to wrestle with the boys. In a second, Greg found himself on his back, and Patty ended up on the front page of the newspaper. But the kid became the laughingstock of the whole school. But Greg claims he deliberately lost because everyone would say he beat up a girl. He has another plan now to become the ultimate fashionista. A shirt and a tie are all he needs. But Rolly set him up and dressed the same way. Everyone is laughing at them again. And that's when Greg first thinks that he needs a new best friend. In class, they watch a movie about self-esteem. A chubby guy with no friends is advised to be himself. He confesses his love for breakdancing and instantly becomes popular with his peers. But Greg smells a setup and thinks about Rolly again. He needs to fix his best friend somehow. He starts with choosing the right wardrobe for Rolly. Then he teaches Rolly to use only one strap of his backpack because all the cool stuff only has one strap, like a machine gun and an electric guitar. But Greg also paints Rolly's pink bike black. Today is the most important day of the year, Halloween, and Greg hopes his friend won't ruin it. Roderick enters the kitchen. The kids plan to go trick-or-treating in the wealthy part of town, where they'll get Snickers and Milky Ways. Roderick scares them, saying they'll have to pass by Devil's Ravine. It used to be inhabited by Satanists who baked children into pizzas. Mr. Heffley, as always, is preparing to protect his house from teenagers who might decide to toilet paper it. The kids return home happy with their bags filled with candy, but then they get sprayed with a hose by some hooligans. Greg yells back at them, and now he and Rolly have to hide from the pursuit. They take refuge in Greg's grandma's house, but the hooligans aren't giving up. To fend them off, Greg arms himself with a lawnmower but accidentally scratches the car of red-haired Pete. He gets furious, and the kids have to run away again. They hide in the Devil's Ravine, where the hooligans are now afraid to enter. But they immediately hear laughter and run out of the ravine in terror. However, it turns out it was just Heffley dressed as a unicorn. The friends manage to return home, where they get soaked with water from Mr. Heffley, who mistook them for the teenage culprits. In one of the classes, it's announced that there are openings for the school safety patrol. And this is what Greg needs to become a cop of middle school, bust dorks, and punish hooligans. The friends receive their uniforms, 2 cups of cocoa, and the opportunity to skip algebra in exchange for supervising kids on the street. However, red-haired Pete's car showed up, and to avoid him, the 6th graders pretended to be preschoolers. They managed to survive until winter, but during a game, Greg threw a ball at Rolly, resulting in Rolly breaking his arm. Surprisingly, this attracted the attention of the girls, who wanted to sign the chubby boy's cast. This way, Rolly ended up at a cozy table with girls, while Greg was once again left with Heffley. Heffley decided to pull a stunt and wrapped his arm with a bandage. However, the girls didn't seem to care about his fake injury. But the boy who drew comics for the school newspaper got sick, creating a tempting job opening. However, to get it, one had to win the art contest. Greg believed he was funny and a good artist, but he couldn't come up with anything decent. So, he called Rolly to help. But Rolly found Greg's jokes dull and decided he didn't need such an assistant, so he chased Rolly away. Now Greg had to watch over the kids himself. It was raining, so Rolly lent him his raincoat. When red-haired Pete's car appeared on the horizon, Greg tried to hide by throwing the kids into a pit at a construction site. However, it turned out not to be the hooligan, but this strange scene alarmed a local resident. Greg lied, saying that he was Rolly and ran away, leaving the kids alone in the rain. The contest came to an end, and a new artist for the school newspaper was chosen. Rolly's comic won. The whole class, except Greg, celebrated his victory. With a cast on his arm, Rolly started getting greetings from popular kids. However, the principal called Rolly to his office. He scolded the boy for his actions, took away his uniform, and demanded that he apologize to the little kids. "We are known by our actions," Greg's mom once told him during a conversation, and he decided to use Rolly as a scapegoat. Nevertheless, Rolly, the Joker, didn't let this get him down and continued drawing a few new comics. Ready to laugh, "I'm the one who scared the kids," Rolly concluded. "You're not a good friend." But Greg only thinks about himself. He laughed at Rolly's clothes, broke his arm, called his comics dumb, and used him with the little kids. Rolly asked him not to call anymore, and they stopped being friends. But Greg hoped it wouldn't last long, but Rolly truly stopped talking to him. And then the little kids told their parents who had actually scared them back then. But Greg lost his patrol badge, while Rolly, for showing courage under false accusation, was appointed as the captain of the school safety patrol. Rolly got a new best friend, Colin. Of course, Greg believes that Rolly is doing this just to annoy him. He'll do the same and hang out with Heffley. But the boy found Greg's candy, ate it with Amy, and went crazy in the end. He picked his nose and terrorized the guest with it. But the guest locked himself in the bathroom and stayed there until the evening. Suddenly, Heffley handed him a letter of apology. But Greg read it and only at the end found out that the booger was stuck to the letter, and he got caught in it. Greg decided to prove to Rolly that he didn't need him by becoming the star of the school play, The Wizard of Oz. Among all the kids, he did indeed have the most beautiful voice. But it was too high for male roles, so he was offered the role of Dorothy. However, Patty was cast as Dorothy because her mom was the president of the Parent-Teacher Association. So, Greg agreed to play a tree because the tree throws apples at Dorothy. Later, he found out that trees don't have arms, but they had to make holes for his arms when one of the students fell and knocked out a tooth. On stage, Greg got embarrassed and stopped singing when he saw Roderick filming him. Patty threatened that if he ruined the performance, she would go on stage and he would regret it. Greg threw an apple at her, but she caught it and threw it back. A brawl started on stage, and Patty finally resorted to her wrestling moves. That was the end of the performance, and even Greg's mom was disappointed. Greg decided to get back at his older brother. He wrapped a chocolate bar in an adult magazine and put it in his brother's backpack. However, it ended up in the hands of little Manny. His mother scolded the young rocker in front of his band, which delighted Greg. Unfortunately, he wouldn't be able to share this with his friend. He had a chance to talk to Rolly at a mother-son dance, but Rolly's new friend Colin kept Greg away from him. Greg felt really embarrassed about coming to the dance with his mom, while Rolly was having a blast. At one point, Rolly asked Greg to give him his video game disc, but Greg refused. Rolly got angry and remembered old grievances. His hand was now sore. A crowd of kids started demanding that the sixth graders fight, but they had no idea how to do it. That's when Red Pigtails and his gang arrived at the school. The Bullies grabbed them. Red Pigtails ordered Rolly to pick up the cursed cheese and eat it. Poor Rolly had no choice but to obey. Next in line was supposed to be Greg, but the gym teacher chased the Bullies away. The kids ran back and saw a terrible scene. Patty was ready to declare Rolly cursed, but Greg claimed that he ate the cheese, and Rolly had only touched it. In front of everyone, he picked up a piece and declared that it was all nonsense, and there was no curse. Angie appreciated Greg's good deed, and he managed to get his friend back. But somehow, it turned out that only Greg was cursed, while everyone treated Rolly like a cool guy. If you enjoyed my retelling, please support the channel with a comment of more than 4 words. It greatly helps promote the video. Goodbye.